Welcome to part 4 of my PID Journey. This series of presentations documents my journey into the Paul is Dead PID subculture. From being a naive yet curious Beatles fan who was totally unaware of the Paul is Dead conspiracy until I stumbled upon it, to becoming a YouTuber via the toxic world of PID Facebook groups with their fiefdoms, feuds and gatekeeping. No journey into the Paul is Dead conspiracy is complete without reading the book, The Memoirs of Billy Shears, which is advertised as the unofficial memoirs of Paul McCartney, and was created by Thomas E. Uharriet, with a foreword by Gregory Paul Martin, the eldest son of the fifth Beatle, George Martin. Memoirs contains both information and disinformation. This presentation is about unpicking one from the other and examines the claims of Dr John Coleman, who Memoirs refers to as the Snitch, who was the first to go public with the Beatles Tavistock project. Memoirs is historical fiction, which is a legitimate genre of literature, be it from The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain to Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden, but there are many other examples. It's a genre of literature that uses fictional characters and events in a real historical setting, and while it often includes real people and events, the genre offers a fiction writer many opportunities to tell a totally unique story. Yes, there are other Paul is Dead historical fiction books out there, but these are written from an adoring fan perspective, and none have created a following as big as the 666-page long Memoirs of Billy Shears, or stirred up as much disagreement within the PID subculture between the book's devotees and detractors. Although the overwhelming majority of PID Facebook groups do not support the theories promoted in the Memoirs of Billy Shears concerning the Beatles or the alleged death of Paul McCartney, it's a different matter on the YouTube platform, where Mike Williams' Memoirs-friendly Paul is Dead channel has a towering 23,000 subscribers, 10,000 more than the more orthodox PID Justice for James Paul McCartney channel. Using the historical fiction genre framework, Memoirs tells its readers that the Beatles were not an organic band. In other words, were not a group of Liverpudlian schoolmates who formed a band and rose to be the biggest and most influential groups in pop music history, as per their official narrative, but were an instrument, pun intended, of the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations think tank, for the purpose of bringing about social and cultural change, which would lead ultimately to a new world order and one world government. In the process of achieving this aim, the Memoirs of Billy Shears claims Paul McCartney was murdered in a satanic ritual and was replaced by William Campbell, otherwise known as Billy Shears or Bill Shepherd, an alleged 33-degree Mason. The details of Beatle Paul's death become more gory with each new alleged sensational disclosure, which some people find disturbing. But don't worry folks, this presentation is not going down the schlock horror route. Memoirs also claims that all four Beatles had doubles, including the current Paul McCartney post holder, which certainly looks the case for Paul McCartney at least, in my opinion. And it appears there was more than just one Paul McCartney double. But others thought the same, a long time before Memoirs was published, and even longer than when I first started looking at the change in ear shapes. Before I forget, I should say that Memoirs claims that Paul McCartney's replacement, Billy, started out as two people. Firstly as Phil Ackrell, who was a guitar player in the early 60s with Birmingham band Denny and the Diplomats, with drummer Bev Bevan, who would go on to play In The Move and ELO, and Denny Lane, who would go on to be the lead singer with the Moody Blues and be Paul McCartney's sidekick in Wings. In addition to being Phil Ackrell, Memoirs claims that Paul McCartney's replacement also played the role of Bonzo Dog Doodah band lead singer Biff Stanshall. In the case of Memoirs, the historical setting involves key dates in the Beatles' rise to fame, and a fictional character called Billy Shears. The author often states that much of the book is fictionalized, so it won't be pulled or blocked from the gatekeepers who are keeping Paul's death a secret. Wheels within wheels and cogs within cogs. Or is it just a great marketing ploy leading the reader to believe they are privy to some sort of forbidden truth, being told through a veil of fiction for legal reasons? Memoirs is certainly a clever marketing concept. The ability to charge avid believers and the curious for new editions that contain approximately the same core text, but with new footnotes that supposedly bring further disclosure about Beatle Paul's death, is brilliant marketing. But having already bought the 0909 edition and Billy's back, I won't be buying any further editions of the Memoirs of Billy Shears, although I understand there is a new one in the pipeline. At the book's core lies the plausible deniability factor. The author isn't saying the contents are true. Its claims certainly wouldn't stand up in a court of law. It at the same time manages to convince the conspiratorial-minded reader that they are, almost managing the suspension of disbelief through the use of words. Is that a form of clever Masonic newspeak, I wonder? It certainly seems enough to convince those who take things literally that what they wish to be true is fact, judging by the comments I've read. The best bet is to read the book and judge for yourself. In short, it contains both information and disinformation. Let's see if we can unpick one from the other. Memoirs tells its readers that the Rothschilds Committee of 300 commissioned the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations to apply mass mind control techniques for social conditioning that would break down all cultural and societal structures and rebuild them according to New World Order agendas. The book's readers are informed that the Snitch, going by the name of John Coleman, was the first to go public with the Beatles Tavistock project. Allegedly, Tavistock made the Beatles one of their culture industry's highest priorities, with the Rolling Stones. Both bands would be used in tandem to achieve societal fragmentation and disintegration. Pretty heavy stuff, eh? So who was the snitch Dr John Coleman who triggered the parroting of Tavistock this and Tavistock that on PID groups and YouTube channels? What do we know about him? Is he a reliable source of information? Can we trust what he was saying? In the foreword in his Committee of 300 book, Coleman describes himself as a professional intelligence officer, I'm presuming with MI6, and that he served as a political science officer whilst in the field in Angola. Yet he completely fails to provide any documentary proof he served with MI6, either in his book or I'm told on his website, if you ignore your antivirus software warnings and risk visiting it. On page 1 of his Committee of 300 book, Coleman writes that on the 31st of April 1981 that he wrote a monograph disclosing the existence of the Club of Rome, identifying it as the Committee of 300, and claims this was the first mention of both organisations in the United States. There's a bit of a problem here with Coleman's claim, given the Club of Rome was formed in 1968 and published its first book, The Limits to Growth, in 1972. It would seem that the existence of the Club of Rome was well known long before Coleman's so-called disclosure. Throughout the 1970s, there were plenty of newspaper articles about the Club of Rome, including numerous reviews of Limits to Growth. As early as the 27th of February 1972, the New York Times featured a report titled Club of Rome, Worldwide Organization, which anyone can find using Google. Oh dear. It appears that no one was checking these facts. Is this how conspiracy theories are born? I've seen and heard the word Tavistock banded around on Facebook PID groups and YouTube channels so much that it would now be almost impossible to convince people that claims made by the person Memoirs refers to as the Snitch are actually untrue. That's despite the evidence presented here that he is clearly an unreliable information source. So there we have it. The Memoirs of Billy Shears is a work of historical fiction which quotes an unreliable source whose credentials are vague and whose claim about the timing of their so-called disclosure is untrue. But then again, it is just historical fiction after all, and as they say, the devil's in the detail. So best not to take everything at face value or believe everything you read or hear.